Sa Advaitam Sa Avadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangscha Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pango Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamahang Vande Shri Gurun Dinatarinam Nindantam Pulakot Korena Bikasam Nipa Prasunachstavim Prodrikritva Bujadvayam Hari Hari Itu Chaivadantam Muhu Nrityantam Drutamasru Nirjara Chaye Sinchantam Urvitalam Gayantam Nija Parasadai Parivratam Shri Gaura Chandram Nama Ananda Lila Maya Vigrahaya Himavadivyachta Visundaraya Tasmai Mahaprema Rasa Pradaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. Yes, some questions? Yeah.
There is a question from Maghanchor Prabhu Kiselnitham, Russia.
Yeah.
Once in a conversation, Muralishwar Prabhu quoted you saying that the Lord reveals himself in grief, in a man and a dream. Maybe
And what?
And a dream.
In grief and a dream?
In a grief, in a man and a dream.
Yeah.
Grief.
Yeah.
Some misery.
And a man, I don't.
It's like Lord revealed to devotee and his extreme circumstance sometimes, where he experienced trouble. Sometimes
Yes.
he revealed a dream.
But what's the part about a man?
I don't know.
A grief?
In a grief, in a man.
An aggrieved man?
No.
No.
In a grief,
Yes.
comma,
Yes.
in a man,
Yes.
comma.
Yeah.
Okay.
По-русски мне скажи.
And
В горе, в человеке и в мечте.
В мечте.
Не в горе, а в горе. В горе. In a mountain.
No, it's a misery or sadness.
Right.
Я знаю, что они говорят.
Maybe I misperceived the idea, but if it is correct, then could you please expound on it more?
I wish I could. I don't. Can I see it for
Yeah,
a second?
of course.
Just-
Lord can reveal himself in mountain, in
The
man,
last one.
and in a dream.
The last
Oh.
one. The last one.
Reveals himself in grief
Можешь мне по-русски сказать контекст?
in a man.
Я просто слышал лекцию Махараджа, что... Но я слышал, как Муралишвар цитировал, он говорит, что человек
Well, yeah, I'm not sure what this particular reference is, but I can say what comes to my mind. And is that the so-called nutshell slokas of the Bhagavad Gita it ends in Jnana Dipena Bhashvata. You know what the first line is? Tushan? No. Tesham evanukam partam aham jnanajam tama. So, Jnana Dipena Bhashvata. So there, the word Gyan is, it seems on one hand the saying, you know, he illumines him with like the torch of Gyan or the light of Gyan. Because it says Jnana deep, like Sandeep, deep, Pradeep, Panch Pradeep, means light. So it says the light of Gyan. It seems to be saying that, right? In other words, that type of revelation you get from knowing something or knowledge. But what Srila Guru Maharaj extracts from there is he's saying, when the devotee is deeply, to use this word, full of grief or deeply aggrieved. And what is that grief but separation from Krishna? That's the grief for a devotee. Otherwise, the only other way we can consider it as Das Goswami saying of Sanatana Goswami Prabhu, Kripayam yat paraduka duki sanatanastvam Prabhu masrayami. Sanatana Goswami, he lives in the plane described by Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur as Vishwam Purna Sukhayate, seeing the world, as full of ecstatic joy. I mean, say, what world is he talking about? Even in the Gita, Krishna says, Dukalaya Mashashvatam. This world is a temporary, miserable place. Dukkhadoshanu darshanam, a correct estimation of this world is it's full of grief, suffering, that kind. But not so for the devotee. Right? So they're not experiencing that sort of sorrow or unhappiness. So we're told that the very word Shudra means one who laments, who cries out, wails in lamentation. And Srila Guru Maharaj said, and what does that imply? Who accepts this world as all in all? Inevitably, they will have to lament, right? Because why? It is dukkhalayam shasvatam, miserable and temporary. So, and so Das Goswami is saying, for a soul like Sanatana Goswami, who lives in that Prabodhananda plane of, Vishwam Purna Sukhayate, seeing the world just full of ecstatic joy, sitting under a tree, writing the Brihad Bhagavatamritam, and so many wonderful things, divine revelation. Saying, but what is the cause of sorrow or unhappiness for him? To see people devoid of a connection with us. That is the only thing that upsets him. Knowing that he's, Gopi, Bhava, Rasamrita, Dilahari, drowning in an ecstatic ocean of Gopi Bhava, and seeing the person next to him suffering, tapi troy, the, threefold miseries of material existence. So for that, he's thinking, what can he do to bring them in connection with that ocean of joy? Anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam purnamridasvadanam param vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. That's that plane. But remember, Guru Maharaj's Bhagavad Gita is called the hidden treasure of the sweet absolute. And hidden treasure being there. So he's saying, there's so many things to be extracted from Bhagavad Gita, but he's saying there's some, in addition to all of that, there's some hidden treasure. And he reveals that through interpretation of different slokas. Like the first one, Avadut Maharaj mentioned, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. So when Srila Prabhupada, Swami Maharaj, came from having, he came back to Jagat Guru. He left India on the boat, the insignificant beggar, Bhakti Vedanta. But he comes back, Jagat Guru. He'd conquered the world with Krishna consciousness. And Guru Maharaj and Chaitanya Saraswat Mat devotees and devotees from other Mat, they go to the Navadvip train station that we all know so well. So they went there, same station, to receive him. And he's visiting and bringing some of his disciples. And we're told they have a big kirtan, greeting kirtan at the train station. Then they do kirtan, Nagar Sankirtan, all the way, the first mat, which Srila Keshava Maharaj's mat, the Devananda Gaudiya mat, originally founded by him and Guru Maharaj together. And they're having a big kirtan there, and all the devotees singing and dancing in unison, this extraordinary kirtan. Then, because it's on the way to Chaitanya Saraswat Mat, then they proceed onward and go to Chaitanya Saraswat Mat. So, Achyutananda Swami was there at the time, accompanying Srila Prabhupada, because he was living in India, and under Prabhupada's direction, took shelter of Srila Sridhar Maharaj as his Shiksha Guru. When Prabhupada said, I accept him as my Shiksha Guru, what to speak of the benefit that you can have. So he was familiar with Chaitanya Saraswat Mat. But he observed, he's very observant, extreme high level of Sukriti at such a young age, to be in such exalted association and like in a mentor-student position. So he's very observant, and he sees Sridhar Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada having some very deep level discussions in Bangla and Bengali, and he's wondering about that. And later he gets the chance to ask Srila Prabhupada some questions, and before we get that, one of the things he says is, what is the difference between that first mat we went to and Chaitanya Saraswat Mat? And of course, Prabhupada gives the perfect answer. He says, the first one, he said, their emphasis is on quantity. There, all the sannyasis were in matching, and brahmacharis matching saffron outfits, dancing in choreographed unison, everything like that, and in a very, grand way. He said, so their emphasis in that way, quantity. And he said, here at this mat, Chaitanya Saraswat Mat, he said, the emphasis is quality, in particular qualitative representation of Krishna consciousness. And then this is Prabhupada, the perfect diplomat, and also showing what he's all about. Prabhupada says, I want that our society will have this quality and that quantity. So he brought the two together, I think, very beautifully. Right? But he wants to extend it. Guru Maharaj is on the rooftop, Gurudev going up there, a select few, the senior godbrothers, but Prabhupada wants to take him around the world. So you always need this combination, right? But he said this emphasis on quality. So when Guru Maharaj says, hidden treasure of the sweet absolute, he's indicating something that's not obvious or apparent to everyone. And not only that, and he's saying, and it's a real hidden treasure, it's something to be mined from there. So, Achyutananda Maharaj said, the Brahma said, what were you discussing? Because he noticed, got some particular feeling from the depth level of what was being discussed. And he said, Srila Prabhupada said, if I told you, you would faint. And he said, he has very high realizations, but he's keeping them within. And it's also at that time, he said, I also offered him the presidency of our institution, and he's declining. Guru Maharaj is always being offered the highest position, and he's always declining also. When they'd have the annual meeting of the Vishwa Vaishnav Raja Sabha, and Guru Maharaj would be elected the president, he would accept the presidency and then transfer it to Goswami Maharaj for practical purposes. And it shows also the sweet nature of the dealing of the divine disciples of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and particularly Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, and a favorite of both and many, Aprakrita Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj. But when he said, you would faint, Prabhupada, he's referring to some of the more confidential aspect of the talks. And Guru Maharaj himself, many years hearing this, he explained what it means. And one of his explanations was that fainting in the sense of you won't be able to maintain consciousness there. There's like literally, fainting, falling down, And then there's, and he's saying, the inabilities to sustain consciousness in that plane. But it may bring great joy to the heart to know that such a plane exists and that there are great devotees who dwell in that plane. Like in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, remember, it's saying this Bhakti Rasamritam, it's a Sindhu, it's an ocean. As you recall, when Mahaprabhu is instructing Rupa Shiksha in Charitamritam, he's telling him, Rupa, the length and breadth of this ocean is infinite. Right? He said, but I'm going to take like a drop and explain that to you. And when we read what was there, we realize that there's infinite, the infinite in a drop as well. But that's what Mahaprabhu says. This ocean, its length, breadth, depth is infinite. As we heard Vrindavan Thakur say the other day, when it comes to these pastimes of Mahaprabhu, it's like a bird flying in infinite sky, just according to their capacity. But when Rupa Goswami is describing that Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the depths of that ocean, because just as a side point, we sometimes think that we have been in connection with Krishna consciousness for some time, and not that we've realized it perfectly, but we have a pretty good idea of what it is. I would say, on the basis of what I've heard from Guru Maharaj, we should really check that tendency. Our connection, we might say, like a slight brush, if we're like, some remote touch and subsequent consideration or conceptualization. Because even just from a very, a simple analysis, those eternal associates of the Lord, if they're engaged in some sort of dynamic, deep diving in Krishna conception, and they've been doing this eternally, right, then how deep are they in that ocean? Right? But like Guru said, even some are standing on the shore, some are touching the water, some, knee deep, waist deep. But Rupa Goswami talks about these deep aquatics in the depths of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And we've heard when that is it the bathyscap, the thing that goes like very deep into the ocean, it's, and for those really deep dive, I think it's called a bathyscap. But, where they go miles and miles and miles, and then to their surprise, they find that there's aquatic life there where other life forms couldn't exist. So in a sense, he's telling us about the fainting thing. Like, there are certain depths of Krishna consciousness you won't be able to maintain your consciousness there. But they're wonderful, and it is attainable by the grace of the higher devotees in time. And so Guru Maharaj recalled back to those moments with Srila Prabhupada, Swami Maharaj, and said, he was, and it just sounds like classic Guru Maharaj, their meeting, what was he talking about? His interpretation of this particular sloka from Bhagavad Gita. And so it says, Yena mam upayanti te, tesham sata, those who are deeply devoted to me, tesham yatan, what is it? Dadami, Priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tame. So Yena mam upayanti te. So he says, this upayanti is we can extract from there upapati, which means paramour. So he's saying it's indicative of parakiya rasa. And he said, and Srila Prabhupada with great delight, agreed with him and said, what more can be said than that? Like, this is the ultimate interpretation of this verse, which shows also that Srila Prabhupada, his personal depth of appreciation of Krishna consciousness, not to any way even remotely demean what he's presented, but we know Prabhupada, he's trying to take this highest thing and deliver it to the mass. So he's sometimes reducing it to simple terms and expressions that he thinks the people can grasp. So the emphasis on, second chapter of Gita, Atmagyan, these sort of things. That is not the limit of his understanding, as indicated here when he's following Guru Maharaj right along with this interpretation, saying, yes, what more can be said than that? He doesn't, he's not confused by it, or he's delighting in it, thinking this is wonderful. And this is also one of the reasons why he's visiting with him, and why he would say, I consider him my Shiksha Guru. So, but then moving on to the sloka under consideration, this concept. So here, as usual, in his employing his ontological method, Guru Maharaj will say, these are the highest level devotees. What is the torch of Gyan? It can't be Gyan in the conventional sense of the word. Because these devotees, they're the higher level devotees, we broadly term as Jnana Shunya Bhaktas, that their devotion isn't tinged by any jnanic tendency, right? The need to know or to scrutinize. Right? So then Guru Maharaj says what it really means is when they reach the depths of separation, when they've reached separate and the most extreme degree, right? And even that is outlined how do you say, sequentially and systematically described by Srila Rupa Goswami and referred to by other great Acharya commentators, that it's said there, the last stage of separation is death. So they're always approaching that, and why don't they die? Because that would make Krishna unhappy. So they want to die. They can't live anymore in separation from Krishna, but they also know if they were to die, that would make Krishna unhappy, and they live for Krishna's happiness. So they go on suffering in separation. Right? So Guru Maharaj says, this verse is indicating when they go to that limit, that height, that extreme, at that time Krishna reveals himself to them, because he also can't tolerate it anymore. So then he reveals himself, and because they've reached that stage, how much appreciation and relish there is on their part. Like the person who's hungry to the point of starvation when they're given food, how much they will relish that. So this is really the subject matter of, it's not just some isolated thing they happen to be talking about, it's the subject matter of the Chaitanya Charitamritam, and the internal reason for the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this world. It's that central. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not just, an anecdotal or peripheral thing that we may consider from time to time, but it is the thing. And what's almost, unimaginably merciful is that it's relevant to our situation. On one hand, it's like the highest thing, and they're saying, well, we can't go there. But it has some connection to our present position. And try to explain how. So, as we were discussing in the recent past about the sannyas of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that afterwards, in this mood, searching for Krishna, Krishnanusandhan, as Guru Maharaj says, in Search for Sri Krishna, and he's saying, generic spiritual culture, Brahma Jigyasa, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, inquiring about Brahma, and he's saying, that is a dry thing. Then he says, now is the time, Atato Rasa Jigyasa, to inquire about the heart's actual necessity, and which will be achieved through what? Krishnanusandhan, the search for Sri Krishna. So Mahaprabhu, immediately upon taking sannyas, he's running for Krishna. That's what's so beautiful. But it's not that he's saying like, all right, there's so many rules from sannyasis. Is there a booklet or something you can give me and I can get acquainted, but I don't want to do anything wrong. He's like, he can barely hold his danda and kamandalu. Other people have to, and he's like running. And Kahan Krishna Prananath. Prananath, means the Lord of my life. Like we say pran, or like the Chinese have qi, your life, the vitality, what's keeping you existing. He's saying he's the Lord of that. It's sort of perfectly expressed in Sanskrit, prananath. And who is the prananath? Murli Vadana, who has the flute in front of his face. Alola Chandrika Lasadvanabhaya Bangshi Ratnangadan Pranayakiri Kalabisham Young Shaman Sundaram Achintraguna Smrupam. And those lines, however they go, they're all beautiful. So his heart, he's just, remember, he already started the Nam Sankirtan in Navadvip. But now, it's like left to what his heart is really aching for, he's running toward Krishna. Then he gets some indication to modify that. We know he's circling for a few days, pulled by the love and affection of the devotees, brought to Shantipur. Mother Sachi can come and she said, you can stay in Puri, which is beautiful and perfect because it's multi-functional. Because when Mahaprabhu said, I got the inspiration, I thought I needed to go to Vrindavan to see Krishna, but now I understand, Krishna is in Puri, right? Jagannath, he's Krishna, right? And it's all so perfect, because which Krishna is he? He's Dwaraka Krishna, right? Where's the separation, the zenith point of separation? Kurukshetra. After all that 100 years separation in Vrindavan, meeting in Kurukshetra, Krishna and queens of Dwaraka come to Kurukshetra, Radharani, Nanda Maharaj, etc., Brajagopis come from Vrindavan, and that's where they meet. That means separation, which produces the highest quality and quantity of Krishna Prem, reaches its zenith point there. That's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Saraswati Thakur, quoting Bhaktivinoda, let drop the enigmatic phrase that, we know Vrindavan's for the shallow, hollow thinkers. A man of real bhajan will prefer Kurukshetra. What? And then the average person would say, oh, you mean where Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita? We worship that, but wrong, not for that reason. Because of this meeting, because that's, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is the expert. He's the one identifying. This is the zenith point of separation. That means that, that at that point, Radharani is in the greatest necessity of service and assistance from her serving group. Right? And Guru Maharaj extracts from this his, like a maxim, that service, according to the intensity of its necessity, draws remuneration. That's the principle. Who can say that? Who can hear all these things and then say that? But someone who's fully realized that. That's why Saraswati Thakur was saying, no, I want to hear Sri Rupa Manjaripada from his lips, from someone who's realized this. This is original from Guru Maharaj. No one ever said this before. It's not written down. Right? Service, according to the intensity of its necessity, draws remuneration. Right? So, if this is the point where her service necessity is at its greatest intensity, and then Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, his strength, oh, if you can render service there at that time, what will come in remuneration? Inconceivable. And he said, there's no danger of ever returning to this plane. And what does he mean? As Guru Maharaj, again, extracting his level, interpretation, Bhagavad Gita, Raso varjam raso pyasya param drishtva nivartate. Which, well, by experiencing higher, it says, use the word rasa, rasa varjam, then any, one will lose taste for any other substance. So Guru Maharaj has said, at Radharani, her group rendering service to her at that time, she remunerates them, which is something that is beyond the constitutional capacity of jiva souls to experience, which is otherwise known as Mahabhav, the supreme highest level of Krishna Prem. When we talked about Chintamani recently, there's a story that says, Mahabhav Chintamani Swarup Radha Thakurani. That's just, leave it as it is. Which is the Mahabhav Chintamani Swarup. Coming in connection with her, one will come in connection with that inconceivable substance, and that's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's strategy. So, so Mahaprabhu, he's running towards Puri, which is as Navadvip is Vrindavan, the Gupta Vrindavan and then Gupta Govind. This is Gupta Dwaraka. Right? So that means the Krishna of Dwaraka, that means Jagannath. So instead he gets the inspiration to go there. But don't you see that it's actually why he's come? Right? He wants to experience the, Param Kasyapi Pranayi Janavindasya Kutuki Rasotsamam Hritva Madhuram Upabhoktam Kamapiya. What observing Radharani in separation has awakened the curiosity within himself to experience what she is experiencing. And that zenith point of those feelings are in two places, the Kurukshetra that we just described, and the other is the Uddhava Darshan, means when Uddhava brings the message to Radharani and Brajagopis, and they're experiencing deep separation from Krishna, and she enters this state of divine madness, giving vent to the Brahmar Gita. So those 2 points. So every year, I think for like 22 at least, or openly, or 20 or so, Rath Yatra celebration. All the Mahabhagavata 200 from Navadvip come and they celebrate that every year. And even though it's a public celebration, still Mahaprabhu is giving vent to very deep, personal, intimate, private sentiments that no one can understand other than Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami, and if you say Rupa Goswami et al. And behind closed doors with Ramananda and Swarup Damodar, that Brahma Gita, divine madness. So, and on his way to Puri, going with a group of devotees, including Nityananda Prabhu, and all the devotees want to go with him, of course, and we're told it's the parallel is when Akrura comes and takes Krishna from Vrindavan, out of Vrindavan, and the way the gopis feel. We know they're grabbing the chariot, they're throwing themselves before, they're on the verge of death. Such intense devotion is coming from them. We're told this is the parallel, same sentiments in these devotees when Mahaprabhu is leaving. But he assures them that first of all, you're my eternal associates. It's like he has to remind, and it's also very sweet and revealing that he has to, they're so intense, these Jnana Shunya Bhaktas, that he has to remind them and almost like preach to them that they are eternal associates of his. Right? Maybe they don't even want to hear that. But he has to say, no, you're always with me eternally. And what did the gopis do when they saw the chariot going, then the flag on the chariot, then there was just dust, and then when it was nothing more to be seen, they just started non-stop singing songs about Krishna, Krishna Katha, Krishna Leela. So he's telling them, engage in Nam Sankirtan, always talk about Krishna, I'm always with you, don't doubt it, and somehow the separation takes place. And on his way there, we know that sometimes he's begging. When he does, he will give his danda to Jagadananda or someone else, or the water pot. At one point, Nityananda Prabhu gets the danda, and he breaks it into 3 pieces. So then later, sometimes they get a little separated. Mahaprabhu's begging, like this cloth, and they hold it like this, and then the people put in, rice or different things, and then carry back, and then someone would cook that. When Mahaprabhu's finished, he says, "Where's my danda?" And he said, and Nityananda Prabhu says, "We were dancing ecstatically, and we both fell on it and broke it," which is not entirely true. And Mahaprabhu, he's expressing some displeasure at that. Right? But we're told, it's very mystical, but we're told really Nityananda Prabhu is saying, like, people will think he's just one of these sannyasis, he's beyond Paramahansa, he generates Paramahansas, and many things to be taken from that. And 3 pieces like Kai, Manobhaka, body, mind, words, and he's just put an end to any lower conception about Mahaprabhu. But as a group, they enter Remuna, the place of Kirchor Gopinath. And we know it's there that Mahaprabhu, he tells everyone what he heard from Ishwara Puri, his guru, about the glories of Madhavendra Puri and Gopal, and how, remember, Gopal appeared to him 3 times. Once to pull him out of the kunja in Vrindavan and establish his worship there, and the subsequent Anukut and the big festival they have. Then second dream, Gopal saying, my body is so hot, I'm still not getting relief. I need you to go get this high quality sandalwood and camphor, and that means he'll have to walk to Jagannath Puri. And it's mentioned there that the word pariksha is used, which means a test or examination. Right? By doing this, Gopal or Krishna is testing him, but inevitably, ultimately, shining a spotlight on the supreme devotion of Madhavendra Puri. So although this is a great hardship for him, considering his age, and in those times that they're walking everywhere, and on top of it, he's a sannyasi, and the sannyasis are forbidden, like from oil or perfumed oils, and this is in one sense considered a real luxury item. So it seems very odd to have a sannyasi. He's going to collect a huge amount of this sandalwood pulp and camphor, like for what purpose? A divine purpose. But we know that he goes there, and it's the multi dimensional aspect of the pastimes that will the journey will lead him to stop in Ramuna, where the Gopinath deity is, who's offered this extraordinary kheer, I believe they call it Amrita Keli, this unique sweet, and they offer 12 pots all the time. And we know that Madhavendra Puri asks, how do they do this? He's thinking, I can make for Gopal. And then showing the perfect devotee that he is, because Rupa Goswami says, Anya abhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam. There should be no, and sarvopadi vinirmuktam tat paratena nirmal. There should be no ulterior motive for devotional activities. So immediately, Madhavendra Puri doesn't exempt himself from this. Like Gurudev said, my religion's finding fault with myself. He's not looking into the shortcomings of others. He sees in himself. And really, he's surrounded all the time by people, we could say, safe to say in general, that are not on his level of Krishna consciousness. Yet, he doesn't find anything wrong with them, but within himself. And he's saying, in the name of, I want to make this for Gopal. Really, I want to enjoy it myself. Such a shameless person I am. And he goes off feeling very upset with himself. We're told that evening, the Gopinath appears in a dream to the pujari and said, I stole one of those pots of kheer and I hid it under my dhoti, and there's a great devotee of mine, Madhava Puri, nearby, and please give that to him on my behalf. Right? And that pujari wakes up, and he bathes. He's a pukka pujari. Make sure he's all nice, and goes in, opens the curtain, and lifts up the door. He says, wow, there it is. There's that, just like he said in the dream. And he goes out with the pot of kheer saying, is there a sannyasi named Madhava Puri, Madhava Puri? And, I'm not Madhavapuri. And he said, Gopinath stole this cure for you. And then we know he gives it to him, and he's so overwhelmed. And so, like when it says, Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam, tasmat paratanam devi tadiyanam samarjanam. More worshipable is that which related to the Lord. So the pot he considers worshipable. There was the kheer, but that clay pot that was holding the kheer is also worshipable to Madhavendra. And we're told he breaks it and carries it around, and every day he takes a piece of that. And he's in ecstasy eating pieces of the clay pot. What kind of devotee? And anticipating pratishta, the name and fame that will, as this spread, when the pujari goes, you know what happened? I had this dream last night, and then everyone will go, where is he? Let's all go and take the dust from the lotus feet of that great devotee. He leaves in the dead of night to escape that. He doesn't, as imitationists, posers, want to make an ostentatious display of achievement, where the substantial devotees always trying to conceal their position. Na prema gandhasti dharapi mehoro. I don't have a scent of the fragrance of Krishna Prem, what to speak of a drop. Mahaprabhu echoing the sentiments of Srimati Radharani. So just the opposite. He's running from that. But by the time he reaches Puri, they know, but they gladly offer that sandalwood pulp to him and the camphor. He returns there, and then that third dream from Gopal comes, where Gopal's saying, he's past the test. The pariksha, the examination is finished, flying colors, and he's saying, same but different, Gopinath and I. So if you give all the sandalwood pulp to Gopinath, then I'll get relief too. And also, not to trouble him. But one thing we get from this is, if we are fortunate, some service will come to us. Like Gurudev mentioned at different times, he said, you can chant anywhere and everywhere at any time and every time, and he mentioned a few different things. He said, but service is not always available. So when you get some service, you have to give everything of yourself to that. And that's what Madhavendra Puri did. Right? So Gopal wanted to show the depths of his devotion in this. So then, as not to trouble him, they carry this all the way back across India, from Puri to Vrindavan. And Gopal saying, we're the same, and it's true, Siddhantically speaking, and Krishna knows who he is. And so he's saying, if you do that, I'll get relief. And so when he tells that to Gopinath's devotees, they're so happy. Like, this is, how Krishna consciousness works. And so Mahaprabhu is telling that. And so there's the emphasis, you imagine, all this rubbing and, the sandalwood. And then he says to Nityananda Prabhu, because remember, took sannyas, wandering in, they stopped there. And this is the first thing he says. Right? So it's very significant. It's not, it just happened to be on the way, and so we're hearing this story. It's of deep significance. Because what is Mahaprabhu's, the inner reason for his avatar? As Gurudev said, you want to understand Mahaprabhu? What is his tasting matter? Pida bir navakala kuta katuta garbhasyanir vasino nishyandena sudhamutam sudham madurima hankara sankochane prema sundari nanda nandana paro yasyantani. Anyway, where Rupa Goswami is saying that what is this produced from the deep feelings of separation from Krishna, as if one is being poisoned by cobra venom, and then nectar is being poured upon you at the same time that's curing that. Both of these things simultaneously. It's very peculiar. So he's saying, what is this tasting matter? Separation. And Gurma's union and separation. And so this Krishna, he's, as we mentioned earlier, Brahma Sangita, Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham, Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahma Sevyamanam, Vaikuntha, one Lakshmi, one Narayan. Goloka, Lakshmi Sahasra Sat, hundreds, thousands, millions, billions of Lakshmis for one Krishna. Right? He knows everything there is about the joys of union. Why has he descended? To taste this peculiar nectarine substance that is only generated from the depths, the heart and depths of separation. That is. So, then Mahaprabhu turns to Nityananda Prabhu and says, can you imagine anyone who has greater fortune than Madhavendra Puri? And they're, it's not really a question. It's, and they're appreciating that. And then Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said, he spoke a verse, he said, that is like as illuminating as the moon. And he said, I consider it to be the Kaustuba money, or the Kaustuba gem of all rasa kavya, rasa poetry. Remember, in the churning of the milk ocean, the Surabhi is the moon, Lakshmi Devi, but one thing also from there, the Kaustuba gem that Vishnu wears on his chest. So in other words, that's the supreme gem. So when he says, I consider this the Kaustuba money of Rasa Kavya, that means, the crown jewel of Rasa Kavya, of Rasa poetry. And then you think, wow, what is this going to be? And when you hear it, you think it's deceptively simple. It's putting forth this deceptively simple assertion. And then what does he say? And it's so perfect because what we just heard is about all this rubbing of the sandalwood pulp, and then he says, if this sloka, if you, like the way you rub, when you grind that sandalwood, then the essence comes out, right? It's converted into the aroma. That's the whole idea, right? You grind it, and then the essence comes out in the form of that divine aroma. So he's saying, when you repeatedly consider, meditate upon this sloka like that, then it's revealed to you. And on that subject, Gurumar said also that just as the sandalwood is through grinding, it seems it's dwindling or diminishing, but it's being converted into its essence. Also through, offering ourselves in service in Krishna consciousness, the mundane aspect of our personality, that's dwindling, diminishing, and the servitor coming out. But anyway, so that's what he says. Right? Then when he says it, he says, and he says, it comes from Srimati Radharani and Radha Thakurani. Saying, by her mercy, it comes out of the mouth, it appears from the mouth of Madhavendra Puri. And so this is that moment, because we talk about, Madhavendra being the bridge to the Gaudiya Sampradaya. So this is that moment, and it's right before he's leaving the world, he starts saying this repeatedly. Not before that. Right at the last moments of his life is when he's repeatedly chanting this. And so he's saying it's that moon-like illuminating everything, the Kastuba gem of Rasa Kavya. And what does he say? Ayi dina dayadranata he, maturnata kudava lakshase, twada loka kataram, doita brahmyati kim karomyaham. So, and again, and what does he say? Only Madhavendra Puri, who got this from Radharani and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, can taste this. There's not a fourth man who can. But the implication, when we say Mahaprabhu, that means on the Rupanuga line, or so. And what does it say? Again, I say deceptively simple. What is she expressing? Saying, in the absence of you, this is breaking my heart, and if I can't see you, I'm confused. How will I go on? That's what's being said. Right? In other words, in separation from you, it's breaking my heart, and I don't know how I can go on living. When Mahaprabhu hears this, it may not have much effect on us. When Mahaprabhu hears this, he goes to pieces. He's crying, fainting on the ground. Tears are streaming from his eyes. Different ecstatic symptoms are playing upon his divine form. And we're told he can't even say the whole thing. He's saying, Ai Deen, Ai Deen. That means, Deen means fallen. I am fallen. And because Gurudev told me once, Guru Maharaj explained to him, he said, I won't tell anyone. And right before he left, one day he said, but I'll tell you two things. He said the two things that are important. Deen, which means, fallen or miserable, dejected, and doya, merciful. Right, so that the deen, like sometimes Gurudev would say, there's only two things we know for sure. One is that we are fallen, and the other is that Krishna is merciful to the fallen, so we can be hopeful or optimistic. So, Mahaprabhu, that's what, so that whole chapter, and if you think about it as a whole, he's on his way to Puri. He just took sannyas. He's searching for Sri Krishna. He's plunging into the depths of separation. And we know, Radha Bhava Duti Subalita, he's enveloped in the heart of Srimati Radharani, and the radiance of that heart is that halo. And this is the critical point of his pastimes, is cultivating separation. And what is it? Some similarities to Asli Shiva Parvatam Panastumam Adarshanam Marmahatam Karotuba. The last sloka of the Shikshastakam. Tatatana Bhavadadatu Lampato Mat Prana Natastu Sareva Napra. Again, saying, you may not reveal yourself to me, but you're unconditionally my Lord. As Guru Maharaj said, if you realize you're not Krishna conscious, you've not got Krishna, he said, but you have no other shelter, no other aspiration, he said, then you might be a devotee. And this classic Guru Maharaj, he didn't say, then you're a devotee. He said, then you might just be a devotee. Because that's a devotee. They'll say, I've got nothing. Again, Madhavendra Puri in that famous sloka about, what is the one? Nugdam mam nigadantu niti nipuna, etc., which ends on Govinda padaspriham. He's saying, you can say, I've joined a cult. You can say I've lost my mind. You can say, he goes over the list of all the things people accuse someone of who's pursuing Krishna consciousness. He goes through the whole list, checklist. And then he says, add this to your list, that I don't have it. So it's one thing you said, I gave up all these things, or I'm guilty of all these things to get Krishna. He said, no, add to it that I didn't get it. Put that on your list. And then he says, but the Govinda pada spriham. He said, but I'm not going to budge an inch from this pursuit. And that's what Guru Maharaj says. If you can admit, after whatever energy, time you've invested in the pursuit of Krishna consciousness, you've not got it, but you're not going anywhere, you have no other interest, no other pursuit, you know this is the ultimate thing, and you're dedicated to that pursuit, he said, then you may just be a devotee. Because that's the nature of the devotees. And I think the Braja Gopis, right, we can understand if you extract from this commentary and that commentary that without going too much into detail, we could say some of them, it may have been the culmination of millions and millions of lifetimes to finally enter into these pastimes. Let's just say that without going into all the details of the different types. But in some cases, so millions and millions of lifetimes to enter that position. And then what happens? They hear the flute song of Krishna, and the support for this is Sanatana Goswami's, Malmeti Sorjana, the Janma Karma sloka, saying, transferred to a universe where the pastimes of Krishna are in vogue, and from the womb of a Brajagopi appear there. And so, hearing the flute song of Krishna, so they're running, right, in the dead of night. And when they get there, what are they told? By Krishna, this is inappropriate. This is adharmic. What you're doing is adharmic, it's inappropriate, and you should go home. That's what he says. And the verse in the Bible says, Kritva mukhan yava sucha svasanena sushad bimbadarani charanena bhuva lekantya asrayupata mashibi kuchukum kumani tashtur mrijanta uruduka barash tushnim. Right? And they bow their heads down and they're scratching the earth with their lotus feet, the toenails on their lotus feet. And the tears are pouring down their eyes, and the mascara is running and it's falling upon them. And why are they crying? They're thinking, Krishna is captured by prem, in the heart. And here we're being rejected by him. So it means we have no Krishna prem, like na prema gandasti dharapi me haram. And then they're going, so then why did we give up our family? They're not crying over their families. They're going, why did we do that? Because we're phonies, we're imposters, we're imitationists. We don't really have Krishna prem. Otherwise Krishna wouldn't reject us. But to make a big show like we rejected our husbands, our babies, pushed them away, to make a show like we have Krishna prem, but we really don't. That's what they're thinking. And then the tears pouring down. But here's the point. They don't go. So they admit they've got nothing, but they don't budge. They stay. They don't go back when Krishna says to do that. So Krishna himself is saying, you, go. And they're crying and thinking they're very unqualified in every way, but they're not going. That's why they're the Braja Gopis, and Radharani is their leader. And the Mahaprabhu descended in this world. And this is the last point I want to make. So we're saying separation, that is what he's cultivating. So we're told cultivating union or milan, that's injurious to the neophyte, not to do that. Very clearly, from Saraswati, on downward, not to do that. It'll be injurious to us. We're not qualified to meditate on those pastimes. But separation is not harmful. In fact, it is beneficial, and from our present position, it's realistic. So from their position, they're experiencing separation, the pain of and the suffering of separation on account of their great love for Krishna. We're suffering separation from Krishna on account of not having love for Krishna. You understand? But cultivating the feelings of separation is the safe path for us. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in the Chaitanya Shikshamritam, two things are the safe zone for the practice. One is the childhood pastimes of Krishna and the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And here we find in the Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamritam, immediately after taking sannyas, going there and ostensibly, and not only ostensibly, really talking about the glories of Gopal and Madhavendra Puri and everything, and then coming to what is that zenith point, where this highest sloka expressing the depths of separation comes from his divine lips, originally from Srimati Radharani, and that is the tasting subject matter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hare Krishna. Hari Harai Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Hari Harai Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. Gopal Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra. Garadhara Sri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath. Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. Jai Goshai Gori Charana Bandhan. Jaha Hoite Vignanas Abhishta Puran. Jai Goshai Jar Mui Taro Kansavara Padarenu Mora Panchagras. Kandara Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanivas. Janome More Abhilas. Jai Goshai Jabe Braje Koilovas. Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash. Oh Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Acharya Satarsa the Sri Srimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Saparikar Sri Sri Guru Gauranga Gandharva Govinda Sundar Jiu Ki Jai. Shri Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Govina Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Sri Gupta Govardhan Ki Jai. Ganga Devi Jamuna Devi Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Om Vishnupad Vishva Varenya Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Acharya Brinda Ki Jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Bhimalavadut Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Ranjan Madhusudan Maharaj Ki Jai. Sri Bhakti Lalita Devi Dasi Ki Jai. Seva Vrinda Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Go Premanande.
Maharaj Ki Jai. And Maharaj Dandavats from Vijay Krishna Prabhu, Ashapurna Didi, Dhanjaya Prabhu Rome, Anandalila Didi Ukraine, Kshama Budhi Prabhu, Anantadev Prabhu Ukraine/Poland, Irem A, Krishna Sharan Prabhu, Nanda Nandana Didi, and Gauranga Prabhu. I don't know. And
Gauranga?
I don't know, it's like Gauranga, just only Gauranga. Yeah.
Okay.
And from Lila Sundar Prabhu, Dandavas to Bhakti Sudhir Goswami Maharaj, Bhakti Bimal Maharaj, Bhakti Lalita Didi, and all the devotees from the Govinda land.
Aha. Hare Krishna. Jai Govinda land Ki Jai.
Jai.
And I Dandavats to Paramananda Prabhu, who soon will be making his way back here. It's been too long for us. And Sri Hari Prabhu, Dandavat, Rupi Vilas Prabhu, Dandavat, Lalita Priya Didi, Dandavat, Supriya Didi in China, Dandavat, Hare Krishna, Chaitanya Nitai Prabhu, Dandavat, Odarja Leela Didi, Dandavat, Brajalatika Didi, Dandavat, and Orsk, I think, right? Or Orenburg, yeah. Adidev Das Shamala Didi, Dandavat, and the parents of Janvi Agarwal, otherwise known as Sandeep and Maheshwari. Dandavat. Kanupriya Didi, Dandavat. Madhavilatta, Dandavat. Hare Krishna. Nalina Nayana Nizhevsk, Dandavat. And Aviram Prabhu, Dandavat. Nadia in Kiev, Dandavat. Leela Sundar Prabhu, where he said Dandavat. Somya Sham Prabhu, Dandavat, and Orsk. And Anjali, Dandavat. Hare Krishna. Nityananda Das, Dandavat. Sulakshana Didi, Dandavat. Ananta Shesh Prabhu, it says in Spain. Well, Dandavat. Priyanana of here, Dandavat. Kamalini Didi, Dandavat. Gaurachandra Prabhu, Dandavat. And my Dandavats to all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, Vanchakalpa Tribhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Bevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna.